Aloha Aina, and welcome to Voices of Truth One-on-One with Hawaii's Future, brought to you by the Kiwani Foundation. I'm Ahu Keikahu Cardwell, and here we are today in Honolulu, and I'm going to tell you this right now. We have a fascinating guest on the show, so let's go on over here and meet her. Marti, aloha. How are you, Marti Townsend? Did I say your name right?
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. And Marti, tell us where we are. This is beautiful.
No, we're in the Foster Botanical Garden in downtown Honolulu.
Wow, this is a beautiful place.
Yes.
And we get to walk through it today on this beautiful day. Marti, we wanted to have you on the show because you're the director of Sierra Club in Hawaii.
Right.
And we have been, anybody who has a newspaper or been online these days knows that there's lots and lots and lots of information and stories and events going on around the issues that you guys at the Sierra Club interact with every day, yeah?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, tell us some of those. What are some of the hot topics today that you guys are dealing with?
Well, the Sierra Club across the U.S. and in Hawaii specifically focuses on climate change, preventing climate change, and adapting and mitigating the effects of climate change to the extent that we can't stop it. So we've done a lot of work around clean energy, for example. Hawaii was the first state to adopt a commitment to 100% renewable energy by 2045, and we've led the way for many other municipalities and states to do the same. But converting to clean energy is the best way to prevent climate change, and we're already seeing the negative effects of climate change from more intense storms like those that have hit the southeast of the U.S., as well as sea level rise here in Hawaii, where we have the shorelines eroding and buildings starting to fall into the ocean. So climate change is real, and it's a significant existential threat to the human race and to the entire planet, everything that lives here. And so it is our priority campaign.
Marti, how large a role did Sierra Club play in getting Hawaii to announce that it was going to go all green?
Well, it was a priority campaign for the Sierra Club of Hawaii to get the 100% renewable portfolio standards adopted. It took a couple of years, and it's been a lead campaign for us for the several years since. Just this last legislative session, Hawaii is the first state to adopt elements of the Paris Climate Accord as state law, which basically means that we are making a commitment to address climate change to the extent that we can, regardless of what the rest of the U.S. does.
So it's a way of saying to the Paris climate change people, if Washington doesn't do it, you can count on us to do it, yeah?
Right, and there are several states who are following suit and trying to adopt the principles of the Paris Climate Accord as their own and make those commitments. And when you get enough of us together, we have a large enough impact that we can still achieve many of the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement, even if the U.S. pulls out.
What are some of the other things that Sierra Club is focusing in on to try to make a difference or change in what's been going on?
Well, here locally on Oahu, we're particularly concerned about the protection of our largest groundwater aquifer.
Okay.
So the primary drinking water source for 400,000 residents and visitors.
Almost 500,000 people.
Is basically 100 feet below about 18 fuel tanks that were built in the 1940s and have leaked ever since they were made. By the Navy's own estimates, about 200,000 gallons of fuel have leaked from these tanks located in Red Hill.
Polluting the water.
Well, you're starting to see trace amounts of petroleum contamination in the groundwater. It's not in the area where drinking water is drawn from, but it's the same body of water underground. And so our concern is that contamination could migrate towards where the pump stations are. And we're really talking about the drinking water of the future for our children. And we just, for the Sierra Club, it's just unacceptable to put that primary drinking water source at such a great risk. Mm-hmm. And so we're advocating for the tanks to either be guaranteed not to leak, 100% leak proof, or to be relocated. We recognize that the U.S. military needs fuel to fulfill its mission. That's fine. They don't get to have that fuel at the risk of our drinking water. And so if they can't guarantee that the tanks will never leak again, the tanks need to be relocated. And so that's what our advocacy has been focused on recently. We've been in court with the Department of Health, helping them to take a stronger position on the protection of our groundwater resources. And we've also been advocating directly to the U.S. EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, and the U.S. Navy, and trying to get them to recognize that relocation is probably the best course of action.
How difficult is it to build and change and turn political will on stuff like this? You laugh.
I mean, it's tough. I mean, these tanks, for example, have been 100 feet above our drinking water resource for 70 years, and have leaked many, many times. And I think it takes a lot of education and public pressure and constant conversation like this to get people to change their minds and to recognize that the risk that we were willing to take 50, 60, 70 years ago is not a risk we're willing to take now.
Okay, so are people open to that when you go to the legislature? Are people open to those conversations?
Oh, yes. I mean, there were more than a dozen legislators who signed on to letters of support for fixing the Red Hill tanks or relocating them. And we've had legislation that has not made it all the way through the legislative process, but significant made it through the legislative process to some extent. And so they've garnered lots of public support and legislative support. And even agency officials recognize that this is a really important issue and they want to do right. And it's a matter of resources. It's a matter of staff and finances to be able to actually enforce the law as it's written and ensure that our groundwater is protected. But we've also had the experience of other private entities hiring lobbyists to work against us and the environment in the past on other issues. This is last legislative session. There were a lot of lobbyists from the personal care product industry who lobbied against bans on sunscreen and personal care products that jeopardize the health of our coral reefs. We also had to, we went up against NextEra, the private company that runs the Florida Power and Light, who wanted to buy the Hawaii's utility. And there were significant lobbyists working on that to the tune of $50,000 a month. Whoa. And the Sierra Club, together with a wide ranging group of advocates, worked really hard to build public support for keeping our utility local, as well as legislative support. Elected and appointed officials came out in support of keeping our utility local. And I think, that combined with the private interest that NextEra demonstrated, the way it overstepped or overcame the public interest in ensuring a fully clean energy utility and putting ratepayers and the public first. Those two things combined is the reason why we were successful in keeping our utility local.
What other important issues are going on right now that Sierra Club is involved in?
Well, the Sierra Club's mission is to help people explore, enjoy, and protect the planet. And in Hawaii, that means getting outdoors and appreciating our unique natural beauty and helping to improve it with, service trips and service projects. And so we have an extensive outings program, which is all volunteer run. And we do things that from educational hikes. People can learn about native plants and geology and the unique natural history of Hawaii, to beach cleanups and trail maintenance projects. The Sierra Club has actually helped to maintain public trails that are heavily impacted by public use, and that's really been at the heart of what the Sierra Club does. We recognize that when people get out into the natural environment, they develop a relationship with the environment and then are more likely to help protect it in the future whenever it's in jeopardy. So that's really what the Sierra Club does. We have a high school hikers program that helps to teach high school students good hiking habits, right? How to hike well, how to be safe, how to backpack, and how to spend a night outdoors in a safe and meaningful way. We also do a lot of projects in partnership with other organizations, so beach cleanups, for example, with other shoreline advocacy groups. We do a lot to help protect the environment and help people to stay connected with their environment.
Wow. Okay, Marti. So when you have these activities and you actually help people get out there, young people, old people, middle-aged people, and some of these people, I guess, are maybe really getting out there for the first time and in a particular way. What's their reaction?
I think people are just taken by the natural beauty of Hawaii. Even for people who have been longtime hikers and are very familiar with the trails and beach parks of Hawaii, just our amazing proximity to beautiful environment. It's overwhelming. It really gets people in a particular way that helps them to feel a certain amount of responsibility, kuleana, to take care of this amazing environment, this aina, that which feeds us. And so we do a lot of different kinds of projects that help people to really live that in their lives. Everything from public trail maintenance to work days in the taro fields. We try to help people feel that connection to the environment so that they are there to protect it. There's still a lot to be done around clean energy, so the Sierra Club will definitely be working on that, continuing to work on that. We also are going to try again on ensuring that we don't allow sunscreens and other beauty care products that jeopardize the health of our coral reefs. Coral reefs are they're the beginning of life in Hawaii. They're also our protection against severe waves and storm surges. They are the foundational pillar of the health of our Hawaiian Islands, and so we need to do all that we can to protect them. So we'll be working on the sunscreen issue, as well as other issues from like sedimentation and runoff, things that affect the quality of the nearshore waters. And then there's also going to be bills around sea level rise. We are trying to continue to be innovative around how we can encourage people to move away from the shoreline, and what we can do as a society to support the protection of our shorelines to allow for natural erosion and not put critical infrastructure at risk of inundation from salt water. So there's a lot to be done.
Well, Marti, in Hawaii, how long has coral reefs dying been an issue?
That's a good question. I think we started to see major coral reef die-offs in the 70s as a result of some of the development that we did, the channelization of streams that forces, when we have large rains, a lot of mud and, just debris to wash out into the ocean.
And this is primarily from construction and stuff like that, yes?
Well, land uses of all kinds that don't encourage, a good ground cover. So it can also be large-scale agriculture. It can also have a negative effect on the streams and then on the nearshore waters at the mouth of the streams. So it's been a long-standing problem. It's one that we didn't really study and recognize until development started to get really intense, and we started to see coral die-offs. And now we have the added stress of climate change making the oceans warmer, and so warm waters combined with pressures from lots of mud on the reef, for example, and then the acidification of the ocean, so the pH balance of the ocean is changing. Those three things together make it really hard for coral reefs to bounce back when they have a stressful event, like a bleaching event. It's harder for coral reefs to bounce back from that. And so you're seeing mass bleaching, and you're seeing the coral reefs not grow back. I mean, it takes 1,000 years for these coral reefs to grow. And so once we lose them, it's going to take another 1,000 years for them to grow back. And so it's really imperative that we do all that we can to protect them. It's part of an overall system of how we use our land and how we make decisions that protect our oceans.
Okay, Marti, so tell us about the rate of coral reefs dying. I mean, is it getting worse? Is it slowing down a bit?
I think it is getting worse.
Really?
So that's part of the reason why there's been such a push in the conservation community to set aside large portions of the ocean for protection and in the form of marine monuments, for example. Scientists have come to the conclusion that we need to set aside at least 30% of the world's oceans in order to have these nurseries of native species, coral reefs, what have you, to bounce back after stressful events like coral bleaching, invasive species invasions. And so, the Sierra Club has helped set aside these, protect these large areas of ocean, but there's still a lot more to be done. We've only a small percentage of the goal of 30% has really been met. And as we're already seeing, like the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, where we're having, mass die-offs and the coral reefs aren't growing back.
Yeah.
So it's a pressing issue, and a lot needs to be done. And the Sierra Club is doing its part to help protect Papahanaumokuakea, as well as other Pacific monuments that are designed to help ensure a resilient ocean.
Okay, so Marti, if they want to protect coral reefs that are around any of the major islands, the populated islands, I mean, how do you do that? Do you say no more building here, nobody can swim here? Off limits to everybody? I mean, how do you do that?
Marine protected areas are one way of ensuring that some places get a chance to recuperate. And marine protected areas typically mean it's a no-take area, and the idea is that
meaning no fishing.
Well, yeah, no fishing, no harvesting of corals, just leave it all untouched. People can still go and visit. Ideally, if you're not sure if your sunscreen is not damaging to the environment, then you should use sun protection, like shirts that are not chemically treated, hats and things like that, so that when you do go out into the environment, you're not having a detrimental effect. And that I think applies across the board when you go out into the ocean. But yeah, you can have marine protected areas. You can also have managed take. I mean, we all rely on fish as a source of protein, and I think it's possible for us to have a healthy fishery and a healthy ocean at the same time. And it's just all about making those quality management decisions about our oceans.
All right, so what you're saying, Marti, is that it doesn't really have to be either or ultimately.
No, it shouldn't be either or.
But for the moment, it might have to be in certain areas.
Yeah, and that's a traditional thing that we've seen in Hawaii, where the Kona Liki, who is the individual that was responsible for managing a particular area, would use concepts like kapu to say, all right, this particular resource or this particular area has been over harvested, is feeling is undergoing a stress. Maybe it's mating season or nursing season, so we're not going to harvest in this area, right? And then, but you use the science, use observation, you understand the history, and you understand how this resource operates, and you make decisions that are informed and ensure that the resource survives, and also that our way of life survives. And that's the ideal balance.
Marti, you mentioned a moment ago about the ancient ways in old Hawaii and pre-contact Hawaii, how they had everything worked out, because after all, this is an island. And if you don't do it right, everybody dies. If you do it right, everybody thrives. I mean, that's really the bottom line.
That is the bottom line, yeah.
And so now today, we find that a lot of those same principles and ways of doing and being are brought forward because they were smart ways, good ways, effective ways. And Sierra Club is one of the entities that is really using those and educating people about those, yeah?
Yeah. So the Sierra Club, along with many other organizations, it works to try to find that right balance between modern living and ensuring that our way of life continues on. And that means that our natural resources are there for us to rely on. And I think we've seen a commitment in a lot of our elected leaders lately, this commitment towards self-reliance and resiliency. And I think it's that emphasis which is going to ensure that Hawaii's unique way of life endures for future generations. I think there was a while there where Hawaii got off path, and we were more interested in the dependency on outside entities to import our food, import all of our building supplies, things like that. But of late, we've put an emphasis on local, right? And so the idea that we can grow our own food, that we can have our own energy from the sun and the wind, like these are the things that will really ensure that Hawaii is strong and endures into her forever.
Yeah, well, you used a word that I think really says it all, and that word is balance. Yes?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because if you have balance, everything's cool. If you don't,
Yeah.
look out.
Yeah. And I will be completely honest, the Sierra Club does have an unfortunate history in terms of its relationship with Indigenous people. There are many things that the Sierra Club did in the 1800s and 1900s that actually facilitated Indigenous people being separated, displaced from their native lands. But I think now we are seeing the leadership of the Sierra Club recognizing that that wasn't the wise approach, that actually when people have a strong relationship with their environment, when they see themselves as stewards and caretakers, the environment thrives. And I think that's what the Sierra Club is working towards today, now.
Yeah, so it's the indigenous people of the world really that can teach everybody else, all of us,
Right.
how to do it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Hey, Marty, what have been some of the major victories the Sierra Club has had over the first 50 years?
Wow, there's so many. I'm not even quite sure I could list them all. But
Well, give us the top 5 or something like that.
So one of the examples that we might be most well known for is the Kaiwi Coast. So the Sierra Club, in its early days, helped to protect that sandy beach area. There was development proposed there, and so now it's a public park and a public beach, and it's famous the world over because that shoreline and roadway is part of the opening credits for Magnum PI.
Wow.
But there's been a lot of examples of marine protected areas that we've helped to establish and advocate for. There's a lot of developments that we've helped to improve because they, didn't take the environment into consideration at the time that they were proposed. And so we can see now developments where the environment is in better balance with what with the activities of whatever the construction was, the project that was proposed.
Well, Marty, what do you think Hawaii would be like today if the Sierra Club had not been around for these last 50 years?
Definitely would have been overdeveloped, right? We're already suffering with, intense traffic and, some development projects that aren't in tune with the environment. And if the Sierra Club hadn't been there, it would be 10 times, 100 times worse. So the Sierra Club has really helped, I think, to keep the environment front and center when we come to decisions where we need to ensure that there's a balance between, modern society and protecting our natural environment.
Wow. What would you like Hawaii to look like 50 years from now when the Sierra Club in Hawaii is 100 years old?
Oh, that's a great question. I'd like to see a more livable, walkable community. So less of an emphasis on individual cars and more of an emphasis on public transportation and mixed use development to where people can, walk to their corner grocery store from their homes. So that I think that will significantly improve the quality of life for Hawaii's residents. I'm also looking forward to a Hawaii that is completely 100% renewable, no imported gas, no imported oil, and we are part of this network of communities that have reliable, safe energy that's accessible to everybody. I'd also like to see a very healthy nearshore resource, and so that means that we're able to control stormwater runoff. That means that people aren't putting things into the ocean that undermine coral reefs, for example. And with a really healthy nearshore, we will be able to have healthy coral reefs and healthy fisheries, and that means that Hawaii will be able to feed itself. And so the last component there would be, farmland that's used to grow food for local consumption, and not things for, primarily for export and things that are not food. But if we can have, a healthy fishery that provides protein and, well-used farmland that provides for the rest of our diet, I think Hawaii will be a better place.
Wow, I don't know about you, but I'd love to live in Hawaii like that. That's quite a long birthday wish list for being 100 years old.
Yeah, not bad. We've done a lot in the last 50 years, and
Yeah.
I think going forward, because we've laid such a great foundation, that we're going to be able to accomplish a lot more going forward.
Marty, I know you have a husband, I know you have a family, and so why is it so important to you to work at a place like the Sierra Club and do the work that you do?
Well, for me, it's about justice. I want to leave my kids a world that is more just and more fair. than the one that I was given. And I recognize that in Hawaii, that really comes down to the environment. You know, it's access to a clean and healthy environment. It's access to traditional ways of living that ensure that we have a just and fair Hawaii for everyone. And so that's why we're going to Sierra Club, is because we are really working hard to advocate for that right balance between modern society and you know, making sure we have all the creature comforts that we've come accustomed to, but that we also have a very robust, healthy environment that's resilient, and that we are able to provide for ourselves in a way that adds to our strength.
Great. Marti, you know, with all the environmental problems that we've talked about today and all that we see, all we have to do is go online, turn on the TV, pick up a newspaper. There's a lot of them out there. But given all that, are you hopeful for the future?
Oh yes, I'm very hopeful for the future. Just recognizing now, you know, I take my kids out to the stream, for example, and they can identify, you know, native opai and differentiate that from the invasive crawfish. I mean, that's an example right there that our kids know more than I did growing up, and that we have the resources that are bouncing back so that they can, you know, continue to have that way of life, future generations. And so small examples like that, if we keep them going, families throughout Hawaii who are maintaining that relationship with the environment, makes me hopeful for the future.
Small examples like that lead to big results, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Wonderful, and that's where we have to leave it. What an inspiring message. Marti Townsend, please don't stop. Please keep what you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Keep doing the good work.
Thank you.
Mahalo for being on Voices of Truth, and mahalo to you for joining me and Marti here at Foster Botanical Gardens. Remember, you can watch us on the web 24/7 on voicesoftruth.tv.com, and you can like Voices of Truth One-on-One with Hawaii's Future on Facebook. I'm Ehu Keikahu Cardwell for the Kiwani Foundation, along with Marti here. And until next time, ahui ho! Mahalo for watching Voices of Truth One-on-One with Hawaii's Future. Watch us on the web 24/7 at voicesoftruth.tv.com. You'll find all our shows, including this one, in case you want to see it again or share it with family and friends. Also view our weekly video commentaries at freehawaiitv.com. And check out our blog, published daily, at freehawaii.info. It's all part of the Free Hawaii Broadcasting Network.